Are you sure they stopped recording the cloud? No, cancel, right? Okay, good morning. Parshas Yitro, Perek Yutes, Pasuk Aleph, Revi, on page 400, easy enough to find on the Chumash. Fourth Aliyah, it's the introduction to the Aseres Hadibros. These psukim are literally the introduction to Revelation itself. And therefore, the Rav wants to understand what message as an introduction is being given to this the most important historic moment in the entire Torah. And he suggests that it describes a very special relationship that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has, but you have to read the psukim in typical fashion very carefully. So let's begin and let's see what we have. It was the third month from Exodus that now on this day they were in the wilderness of Sinai. Vayisu merifidim, vayavo midbar Sinai, vayachanu b'midbar, vayichan sham Yisrael neged ha'or. They journeyed from the area called Refidim, and they arrived at the wilderness of Sinai and encamped. Israel encamped there opposite the mountain. Moshe Allah el Elokim vayikra elav Hashem min ha'or le'mar kos amar lebeis Yaakov v'saged lifnei Yisrael. Now Moshe and Hashem calls to him from the mountain, saying, "So shall you say to Beis Yaakov, right, to the house of Yaakov, and relate to Bnei Yisrael. Atem re'isem asher asisi leMitzrayim v'eseschem al kanfei nisharim v'avem Eloi. You have seen what I did to Egypt, and that I have borne you on the wings of the eagles and brought you to me. Ve'ata, and now, im shema tishma b'koli ushmatem es b'si v'isem li segula mikol amim ki li kol haaretz. Therefore you shall be a king of Kohanim, and are the words that you shall speak to the children of Israel. Right? Vatem tilei meches Kohanim v'goy kadosh. Right? Pasuk 6. And you shall be a kingdom of Kohanim v'goy kadosh. Kili, 1 second, Vatem Kohanim el bnei Yisrael. These were the words that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to bnei Yisrael. Okay, that's the whole introduction, if you will.
You should speak.
You should speak to bnei Yisrael. So those are the words, the introduction to Revelation itself. So let's see what Rav Soloveitchik has to say about these important words as an introduction. He starts on the very opening words. B'chodesh hashlishi. How would you translate B'chodesh hashlishi? The third month. And the Rav says, we're just being told a time on the calendar. It was the third month, right? So it's Sivan. That's what is it telling us? No. And the Rav says, you got to read those words very carefully. And they're replete with crucial ideas pertaining to Matan Torah themselves. It's not just a date that is being said in those two words. Much more. 3 thoughts are being taught to us and through those two words. First idea is B'chodesh. What does Chodesh mean? And what else does it mean? New. It's Chadash. It's the same word. Chadash, right? Chadash. A month is new, isn't it? That's the whole idea. The month represents a new moment. That this is a crucial description of what's transpiring here as the moment in history. It's a totally new people, new time. Everything is new about it. And there are 3 fundamental transformations, the Rav notes, that are occurring here in particular. Number 1, there's our physical transformation from slaves to a free people. We are no longer physically slaves to anyone, right? That's number 1. That's new. Number 2, there's a psychological transformation from a slave mentality to a free person. We see this truth right now with the hostages from Gaza, right? That there's a psychological state of mind that is terrible and it needs to be addressed, and they are addressing it in Eretz Yisrael. It was no different for us after we left Egypt. Psychologically, we were tormented as a slave people. And the Torah constantly depicts this, and its impact that it had on us. For example, when we complain that we would rather stay in Egypt rather than be led by Hashem through the Midbar, that's a psychological trauma that occurred because we were slaves in Egypt. So here it's all new, a transformation physically, a transformation psychologically. And there's a third transformation also that's new and occurring here. We are now able to surrender ourselves to a higher power. We are believing that Hashem is the power. We accept that we are subservient to Hashem and Hashem alone. And this is the moment that our sages refer to when they say, the only one who is free is the one who is involved in Torah. And this is what is meant when they said on the Pasuk, Perik Lamed Beis, Pasuk Tez Zayin, where the word describes, the Torah describes how the words were etched into the stone. It says, Chorus ala luchos. No, they said Chorus really spells Cherus. Cherus means what? Freedom. Freedom through the stone. What do you mean freedom? Freedom from the stone. And the Chazal say, Al tikro Chorus elo Cherus. Do not read the phrase as etched upon the tablets, but rather as freedom from the tablets. In other words, the Torah is our source of true freedom. So the Rav understands that this is the introduction to Sinai, to Revelation itself. And he said there are three transformations, all new phenomena that it's called. Chodesh Hashlishi, don't read it as Chodesh, as a month, the third month, but read it as a moment of transformation, right? Chodesh is a moment of transformation. Three new ideas, three new transformations were happening to Klal Yisrael. A physical, we were no longer physically slaves to anyone. Psychologically, we confronted, right, our fact that we had to overcome the psychological torment of slavery. And the third one, that we are now subservient to only one power in the world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And those are the three transformations that occur and alluded to in the word Chodesh. Not Chodesh, read it as Chodesh, new. And the Rav adds another idea that's so crucial, which dovetails to the last comment that he makes, which is the fact that we accept HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're subservient to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and HaKadosh Baruch Hu alone. The Rav notes, tell me, how do we impart the Torah from here on? Do we do it through etching our Torah in stone? No, we write it on a parchment, on a scroll. If that's the case, the Rav wonders, why was it written initially on, why did it have to be etched? Why did Revelation not come down, if you will, on a scroll? It could have been on a scroll, right? It could have been. It could have been handed to Moshe. Here's the Sefer Torah. Give it to Klal Yisrael as a scroll. Why did it have to be etched in stone? That was what the Rav asked. And he answers very simply. The reason is that the words etched in stone teach us a very important lesson. Words can easily be erased from a scroll, but you can't erase from a stone unless you destroy the stone, right? This symbolizes our unqualified commitment to the higher authority that the Torah represents, right? All of this is learned in two words, Chodesh Hashlishi. Okay? That's, yeah, sure.
Does the Shlishi refer to the three forms of transformation?
Oh, no, it is allusion. Yeah, he's using that.
Allusion.
Yes,
okay. But
it really literally means Chodesh Hashlishi, the third month. But the Rav says there's much more to it here that you can read. Just from the fact, if there weren't no Nakudot, how would you read Chodesh, right? Chodesh, right? Three things are happening, three transformations that are all new for Klal Yisrael.
And stone from Chodesh Hashlishi.
No, he doesn't.
No,
He doesn't. He has that. Remember, the third transformation was that we are subservient to the Torah, and so the Rav notes as an aside. The Rav points out, by the way, how's Revelation going to occur? How are we going to receive that Dibros? Not on a scroll, not on parchment. We're going to receive it on stone. Why? To teach us that very lesson. Words can be easily erased from a scroll, but words cannot be removed from a stone, destroying the stone. Okay. Continues into Pasuk base. Vayisu merifidim, vayavo midbar Sinai vayadbar. And what happens? And they travel from they journeyed from Refidim and arrived of Sinai. Where is Refidim? When we heard of Refidim before? Sure, you just have to remember very easily. Go back to Perek Yud Zayin Pasuk Aleph. Back in Parshas Bishalach, Shavi, page 388. Vayisu kol adas b'nei Yisrael lemidbar Sin l'maseihem al pi Hashem vayachanu fidim ve'ein mayim lishtos ha'am. So we travel from, it's really, we go from Sin, then we travel to Refidim, and when we hit Refidim, ve'ein mayim lishtos ha'am, we do not find water. And what do? Continues on there. What do you remember what we did? And we were really about ready to kill Moshe. Really, literally, the Torah describes it. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him exactly how to. Fine. What happens right after the Pasuk Ches? Vayavo Amalek im Yisrael b'Refidim is where Amalek. So the Rav questions why the Torah would have to repeat the information that Refidim when we just saw it. Just a paragraph or two earlier. We know what happened at Refidim. Amalek was at Refidim. What new information is the Torah providing left Refidim on our march towards Har Sinai? And that the Torah is setting up a contrast on how we reacted at Refidim and how we reacted at Sinai. At Refidim, that they didn't have water, what did they were upset, they were frustrated. We don't have food, we don't have water, and they complained, and they really were going to take action against Moshe. Now, as they approach the area of Har Sinai, how do they act? Did they act that way? Not at all. The Rav points out, by the way, he notes that a people loaded with livestock do not want to be hamstrung and confined to an area right in front of a mountain. Where right in front of the mountain is a very limited area. It has no vegetation. It is terrible for your livestock. What do you want for your livestock? You want just the opposite. You want an area that's wide and open where the livestock can spread out and the flock can find food. That's what you want. And here we come from Refidim to Sinai, willing to stand in front of all of our livestock, and we shut our mouths. We don't say a word of complaint. It is a contrast that is not just telling you, it's setting up a literary contrast. By Refidim, you were ready to lynch Moshe, where you really because there is no room for you. This is not a very good place to be situated, right? And you're united to the point, what is the Pasuk said? Vayifon. That's exactly what the Torah is telling you. It's Refidim. Once we were at Refidim, we learned a lesson that outlook towards life. At Refidim, we encountered the hatred that only for one reason, we were Jewish. That's why they hated us. That's what we learned at Refidim, that there are people in this world that will hate us just because we're Jewish. And this taught them salvation for us is a commitment to Torah and to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If we would not be committed to Torah, they repeat instances of Fidim. That's exactly what's going to happen. A commitment to Torah is our only salvation. And that's why it says Fidim, not to repeat what we already know, but to set up this demonstrating. Over there we complained, but we didn't, right? That's how he understands. All of this to Revelation itself. Continues on. Umoshe Allah el Elokim, vayikra Eloh Hashem min har lemor, kosamar leves Yaakov, v'saged livnei Yisrael. Pasuk Gimel, right? Moshe ascends to God. Hashem calls to him from the mountain. What does he say? Kosamar leves Yaakov, v'saged livnei Yisrael. How many parts of Bnei Yisrael are there in this pasuk? 2. What are there? One's called Bnei Yisrael, and one's called Beit Yaakov. Beit Yaakov. That's, by the way, where they got their name. Correct, of course. That's why she called it Beit Yaakov. Okay. The Rav quotes Rashi, who says the expressions of Beit Yaakov and Bnei Yisrael are very specific to 2 distinct segments of the Jewish people. In allusion to the women, Bnei Yisrael is an allusion to men. Why, wonders Rav Soloveitchik? Do we have to divide the people into men and women when we're about Revelation? Everybody here have to no, there's a segment called women, there's a segment called men. He answers because this reflects the truth that we have to have 2 distinct traditions, and they're equal. They're equally important. One is going to be imparted by the man, and one is going to be imparted by the woman. They reflect the pasuk in Mishlei, Perek Aleph, pasuk Ches, the famous pasuk, Shema bin Avicha, va'al Torat imecha. Hear, my son, the musar, the instruction of Avicha, your father, va'al titosh, do not forsake Torat imecha, teachings of your mother. The Rav suggests what today we would call totally non-woke idea. It's a non-woke idea, but the Rav is writing back in the 60s and he's teaching this, right? But it's so important today and more than ever before. It's crucial for us to appreciate. He notes the Torah is teaching us that we have a mother. There's a reason we have a father. They are different influences upon the development of the human being, and they both are required in a spiritual development of a human being. The father, the Rav states, teaches us text and law. He's the one who teaches us analytical and conceptual part of the Torah. We learn laws from him, the Rav says, that we may and may not, what we may and may not do halachically. That's the job of the father. The father is the one who teaches us. And quote the Rav, the father's tradition is an intellectual, moral one. That is why the verse identifies it as musar, right? Shema mini musar. Musar is the biblical term for discipline. The father teaches us the discipline of halacha. But what is Torat imecha? What does the mother impart? And here the Rav becomes very personal and reflective. And he said that his mother, who, by the way, was a brilliant woman, she was a Feinstein, she was Rav Moshe's cousin, first cousin, the Rav was a second cousin to Rav Moshe, but his mother was a Feinstein, and his mother was, like I said, the first cousin to Rav Moshe, and it is his mother who Rav Soloveitchik credited with the one who introduced him to an interest in secular literature and philosophy, by the way. Nevertheless, she offered him, and he says this, a unique Jewish perspective that his father never could. He needed his mother just as much as he needs his father, because one needs both influences. It's Beis Yaakov and Bnei Yisrael. She was the one who taught him how, the Rav said, to live Judaism. In his poetic and beautiful words, this is how he wrote it. I used to watch my mother arranging the house in honor of Shabbos and the Yomim Tovim. I used to see her recite prayers. I used to watch her recite the Sidra every Friday night. I still remember the nostalgic tune that she used. I learned from her very much. Most of all, I learned that Judaism expresses itself not only in formal compliance with the law, but it's also a living experience. She taught me there's a flavor, a scent, a warmth to mitzvot. I learned from her the most important thing in life, to feel the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the gentle pressure of his hand resting upon my frail shoulders. Without her teachings, which quite often were transmitted to me in silence, I would have grown up a soulless being, dry and insensitive. The laws of Shabbos, for instance, were passed on to me by my father. They are part of Musar Avicha. Shabbos as a living entity, as a queen, was revealed to me by my mother. It is part of Torat Imecha. The fathers knew much about Shabbos. The mothers lived Shabbos, experienced her presence, perceived her beauty and splendor. The fathers taught generations how to observe Shabbat. Mother an introduction to Matan Torah. What does the Torah say? Tomar Leveit Yaakov v'taged livnei Yisrael. Two segments of the Jewish people, and they're equally important, equally have to be understood that you need both of them. Continue on. Then he goes in Pasuk Hey. Atem Yisem Pasuk Dal Asher Azizi V'Ases Chamakav Fei Ashorim V'Ata Im Shamoa Tishmeu B'Koli Ushmartem Es Brisi V'Yisem Li Sigula. And now, if you hearken well to me and observe my covenant, you shall be for me, to me, my segula. What does v'yisem li segula mikol ha'amim mean? That is the question that the Rav needs to deal with. What does the word segula, treasure, which is translated as treasure, really mean in reference to our relationship with Hashem? And the Rav noted that the best one to give us a good explanation of that was Yehuda, when he was speaking to the viceroy of Egypt on behalf of Binyamin, right? But he didn't know it was his brother Yosef. And he's speaking to Yosef without realizing it's Yosef. And Yehuda says, I want you to understand the relationship that father has with Binyamin. Now, it's the identical relationship that he had with Yosef, but he's not talking, realize he doesn't think he's talking to Yosef, right? He's thinking he's defending Binyamin in front of a viceroy, in front of an Egyptian, not in front of his brother Yosef. And what does he say about, what does Yehuda say? You can't keep Binyamin because Binyamin has a unique relationship with our father Yaakov. What is it? Nafsho kishura benafsho. Isn't that what he says? Nafsho kishura benafsho. Their souls are bound. They're glued to each other. Nafsho kishura benafsho. The Rav says Yehuda describes segula. Segula means that attachment where you're bound to him. His love is, and quote unquote, the Rav in philosophical terminology, an ontological merger. In the words of the Rav, the people of Israel are a segula people, a nation which God has exclusively designated to preserve and disseminate his teachings. We're nafsho kishura benafsho. Like Binyamin and Yosef had a special, Yehuda saying this, the other 10 boys did not have that relationship with their father. It was a segula relationship because they were the children of his beloved Rachel. It was a segula relationship that they had. He admits it. And Yehuda, Melech Yehuda, he admits it, right? Melech Yisrael, he admits it. Then you want to describe the relationship, a segula relationship, it's Binyamin and Yosef with Abba, with Yaakov. It's one that's bound, glued at the hip, if you will. This unique relationship with Hashem, we express every day, by the way. The Jew expresses it via 2 brachot. Not 1 bracha in the morning. We say 2 brachot, the Rav notes. One is in the negative, one's in the positive. The first is Shelo Asani Goy. We're not part of the Gentile world. we say unequivocally, we are not Gentiles. Shelo asani goy, unequivocally. But then we make another bracha in Birchos HaTorah, Asher bocharbanu mikol ha'amim. You've chosen us from the nations, correct? So the Rav wonders, why do we need two brachos with the same idea? It's the same idea. We're not Gentiles. We have a unique relationship with you. And the Rav explains that each bracha relates to a different aspect of our chosenness, doesn't it? When we say Shelo Asani Goy, what are we declaring? We're progeny of Avraham. We're progeny of the Avos. That's what we're declaring. Shelo Asani Goy. Our ancestors are Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. Those are our ancestors. What do we say when we say Asher Bocharbanu? That's a totally different kind of bracha. We're not talking about being progeny of Avraham. The second bracha does not reflect this aspect at all, but it reflects the chosenness that involves a higher sanctification that comes through our connection through Torah. Correct? It's a very special connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu via Torah. And the Rav noted that this explains a puzzling area in halacha, but we don't think about it until he places it on the table for us to realize, yeah, it's puzzling. What if a person decides he wants to become apostate? He wants to leave Judaism. He's born, his progeny, he's who? Avram, right? He's a descendant of Avram. So, but he says, I don't believe anymore. Okay, so what happens with this individual? If he writes a Torah, do we use that Torah? That Torah has to be burnt. La halacha. An apostate, that Torah has to be burnt. If he does shchita on an animal, can you eat the food? The food's treif. I don't care how perfectly he does it. He might do it with all of the simanim that are required in Hilchos, in Yeredeya, in Hilchos shchita. It's treif. You can't eat it, right? But what happens if he betroths a woman? Does the betrothal stand? Yes. Yes, it does. He's married to her. He's married to a Jewish lady. The Rav wonders, how can that be? On the one hand, we said his shchita is worthless. His Sefer Torah has to be burnt. Why? Because the Rav notes, the answer is there are two brachos. There is the Shelo Asani Goy relationship with Hashem. That stands. That can be never severed. That can be never severed. The apostate cannot lose his lineage. He is a descendant of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. He can, and he marries a woman, a Jewish woman. It is Kedushin. It's Kedushin. They're married. But what does he lack? The second bracha, Asher bocharbanu mikol ha'amim. To have kosher food, to write a Sefer Torah, you have to have the connection of Asher bocharbanu mikol ha'amim. The segula relationship is which one? The second one. Segula relationship is the one that the apostate rejects. Vatem tiyu li segula, right? That's what Hashem wants. I'm sorry, v'yisem li segula are the words. V'yisem li segula mikol ha'amim. That is the Asher b'charbanu, the Rav notes. It's not the Shelo Asani Goy. The Shelo Asani Goy is your lineage. Your lineage, okay, you can never, you can't reject, you can't reject that, that's correct. So brilliant on how the Rav understands, again, what is segula? Nasho kishura benafsho, that comes through Torah, right? That's a unique relationship that we have. Not every Jew adopts the segula relationship. Some only realize that they're Jewish because they're born Jewish, but they have nothing. I was just telling the Gemara Shiur last night. I'm reading a fascinating autobiography by a brilliant lawyer. He describes his whole upbringing, right? And he says his family was not Jewish except by Shelo Asani Goy, not Segula, not Segula. They had no, but there were red lines. There were red lines in the house. You could never eat chazer. They ate treif, but not chazer. Pig, no. Chazer, no. They could eat the shellfish. They could eat all of the other stuff. Chazer, that was the red line, right? That's Shelo Asani Goy. That's not the segula relationship. The segula relationship comes with benafsho kshura benafsho. It's asher b'charbona mikol amim. And then the Rav goes on. Take a look here. V'isam li segula mikol amim. I want you to be a segula. I want you to have this second relationship with me, right? What are the next words? Kili kol haaretz. Translate those words for me. This is 3 word kili kol haaretz, 4 words that represent a major historic moment of the Jewish people, right? According to the Ramban, he writes this in numerous places. He says in Bereshis, 2 places, in Vayikra, 1 place, Bereshis 26:5 and 48:7, Vayikra 18:25. When the Avos and the Shvatim are living in Eretz Yisrael, the Ramban says they kept the Torah. The Ramban says the Avos and the Shvatim, when they were living in Eretz Yisrael, with Eretz Yisrael, the Ramban believes, with Eretz Yisrael came Shmiras HaMitzvos. For the Avos, we know this, right? We know this tradition that we have, but the Ramban really emphasizes it, that the Avos kept the Torah, even though it was before Matan Torah. Why? Kili kol haaretz. What is he saying? The land of Israel and the Torah's Israel are linked. They're fused together. That's the concept. Kili kol haaretz. Now, however, we're ready for revelation, right? A new bris is going to take. There was 2 brisim. The Rav talks about this quite often. There were 2 brisim, 2 covenants in Jewish history. There's the covenant of the Avos, and there's the covenant of Torah, of Matan Torah. Sinai and Avos. Bris Avos, Bris Sinai. The new covenant is now going to be established, and it has nothing to do with the land of Eretz Yisrael. Fascinating, right? Bris Avos is fused with Eretz Yisrael. When they're living in Eretz Yisrael, they keep the Torah. This transcends, Matan Torah transcends every land, wherever you are. You can be on the moon. I've said this to you numerous times, right? You can be on the moon. You got to ask, how am I supposed to function? Right? The Jew, no matter what, how am I supposed to say Kiddush Lavan on the moon? Right? That was the famous question. I told you, Menachem Kasher Torah Shlema, Zichrono Livracha, the one who wrote the encyclopedia work that we have right there on the second shelf, all the way up. Torah Shlema, it's an encyclopedic, masterful work. Menachem Kasher wrote a little sefer after man landed on the moon at the end of the 60s, and he called him Adam al Hayareach. I have it in my library. Adam al Hayareach is a very thin little sefer. He raises some of these questions, like interesting questions halachically that we're going to have to answer. What man on the moon? What do you do? Right? So the Rav points out, where did revelation take place? Not in Eretz Yisrael. To teach us that it took place in no man's land. It took place in the Midbar. Why in the Midbar? That observance fused with a land. It's fused with the world. You have to observe the Torah no matter where you are. And Rashi took this one step further. Rashi, the Rav points out, says the Sinaitic covenant, the Bris Sinai, he argues, did not replace Bris Avos. Rather, it added to Bris Avos. According to Rashi, the Jew who lives in Israel has 2 brisim. He has the covenant of Avos. He has the covenant Sinai. The Jew who lives chutz la'aretz, 1 bris. The covenant of. Fascinating. Rashi, you hear this? Rashi says a Jew who lives in Eretz Israel has 2 covenants. He has the covenant of the Avos and the covenant of Sinai. The Jew who lives in Chutz La'aretz, we who live here, according to only 1 covenant that guides us, which is the covenant of Sinai. But there's another crucial lesson that this lesson only could be taught by Rabbi Soloveitchik. These 4 words, Kili Kol Haaretz. Kili Kol Haaretz, we understand what it's teaching us, right? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu owns the land. So if HaKadosh Baruch Hu owns the land, right? The world is mine. Therefore, I can make a whole new covenant with you. But there's a crucial another lesson in these 4 words the Rav notes. He says, don't focus on the parochial nature of this moment. This moment naturally should be a parochial nature, right? We Jews are getting Torah, and we should be only concerned with me, myself, and I. The famous Zimun, right? Me, myself, and I, right? No, the Rav is saying, Kili kol haaretz. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching Klal Yisrael that at this moment you have to have a universal view as well. The Jew has to have a universal will, not totally reject the universal components of our lives. The Rav understands Kili kol haaretz as saying that Hashem is reminding us that although he has a special relationship with Bnei Yisrael, which is going to be manifested Sinai through Matan Torah, Kadosh Baruch Hu's underscoring that. That doesn't. I'm not going to be just yours. Yeah, we'll have a segula relationship, a nafsho to Shira benafsho. But what about the world? God's seen, I promise a connection with the world at the same time as I have the segula relationship with you. This reminds us of the Rav's observation about Sefer Yonah. When do we read Sefer Yonah? At the day of parochial concern. All of Yom Kippur up until Mincha, we have been focusing on what? Mechal lanu, kaper lanu, right? Focusing on ourselves, on Klal Yisrael. We've been very parochial in our view when we daven all of Yom Kippur. Comes Mincha, Eis Ratzon. What does Chazal insert as the Haftorah? A universal theme. Yonah is all about the world doing tshuva, correct? It's a universal theme. In other words, just be parochial, he must also be universal as well. He must. The Rav understands exactly that. Being taught to us at to agree to have the bris avos occur. It's so Rabbi Soloveitchik, it's unbelievable, because you can see this very universal idea, right? The Rav always said, we have our talents to the world, and we promise the world that we will, right? Yeah, right, exactly, true. Okay, let's see how it all then ends. Va'atem tiyuli, this is the most difficult pasuk of the whole shiur. Va'atem tiyuli mamleches kohanim v'goy kadosh. Ela advarim asher tidaber el bnei Yisrael. So pasuk 6, pasuk vav. What does it say? Va'atem tiyu, you shall be for me a kingdom of ministers and a holy nation. Va'atem tiyuli mamleches kohanim. The Rav notes that it is Onkelos who's the one who interprets this statement to be Mamleches Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh, a twofold description. A kingdom, like it's translated here. It's translated as a twofold, right? A kingdom of Kohanim and a Goy Kadosh. That's what I mean by two segments, right? There's a Mamleches Kohanim. How would you translate Mamleches Kohanim? It's a kingdom, right? It's a nation of priests, a nation of holy people, right? In other words, this pasuk is referring to a division of two in the nation. There are Kohanim and there's the nation, correct? That, the Rav notes, is the translation of Onkelos. It is not Rashi and it is not the Targumim. Rashi does not accept Onkelos. He says Kohanim means officers, not Kohanim, officers. Why didn't Rashi accept Onkelos's interpretation to mean the Kohanim in the Mikdash, right? The clerics. Furthermore, you should know, Targum Yonason and Targum Yerushalmi both suggest not a twofold, but a three-tiered allusion. The Mamleches Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh, Mamleches is a noun and it means kings, according to the Targumim. It means kings. The next is Kohanim, right? Mamleches is kings. Kohanim is those who serve in the Mikdash. Goy Kadosh is the holy nation. So it's a three-tiered. Why did they choose a three-tiered? Right? Onkelos chooses the way we understand it. what's as translated, Mamleches Kohanim v'Goy Kadosh, there is a nation of priests and a holy people, right? That's how we understand. No, the Rashi says that's not what it means. Mamleches does not mean Kohanim. Kohanim does not mean Kohanim. Kohanim means officers, right? Officers, political leaders. In other words, political leaders. Okay. So, and the Targumim mentioned three-tiered description. So the Rav explains the three-tier is easy to understand. Three-tier description of Targumim makes a lot of sense. Why you would divide Klal Yisrael into three? Because we are Kohanim, Leviim, Yisraelim. That is a standard way of approaching how you divide the Jewish people. The Jewish people is understood to be a three divisions, right?
So
There are Kohanim,
in
Levim, Yisraelim.
In all the interpretations, the Goy Kadosh is the people.
Yeah,
Okay.
100%. Goy Kadosh is the people. In light of that reality, they therefore structured this to mean a three-part division. There are Kohanim, which they would translate as the clerics who serve in the Mikdash. Then there's political right leaders, Kohanim. Then there's the political leaders. There's the Mamleches, right? The political leaders who lead the people. And then there's the Goy Kadosh, the general public. Rashi interprets the word Kohanim linguistically. He wants to know what does Kohanim mean? He says linguistically, Kohanim does not mean clerics, but to simply mean ministers. And he thereby avoids cornering himself into a three-part division. That's Rashi. But then the Rav suggests that there's one more. This, neither Rashi nor anybody else, right? Rashi translated linguistically what Kohanim meant, or the Targumim, who felt it had to reflect three-part division. The Rav suggests that this wording be understood in a two-part suggestion. He bases his suggestion on another place in Torah. How do you translate Shabtotai? In Vayikra, Perek Yutes, Pasuk Gimel, Shabtotai. That's more than one Shabbos, isn't it? Yeah. Shabtotai is plural. And so Chazal say Shabtotai, every Shabbos has two Shabbatot. There's the Shabbos that it calls the Shabbos of the earthly, that's Shabbos Tata. That's the Shabbos down here in Aramaic. But then there is the Shabbos in Shamayim, Shabbos Elah. That's the Shabbos and upstairs. Some of the Zmiros refer to this, by the way, and allusions to this idea. There are two Shabbatot. There is a Shabbos below and a Shabbos above. And he therefore understands Kohuna, Kohanim. Kohanim is also plural, isn't it? So there's a Kohuna Patata, the earthly function. That would be, how would you describe that? The clerical function of the Kohanim serving in the Mikdash, right? Then there's the Kohanim Elah, which is, what is that job of the Kohen? That's the Kohen who teaches Torah. That's the Kohen who teaches Torah. This wasn't limited to Kohanim at all, the Rav points out. Actually, the teachers were overwhelmingly Kohanim, historically. But it says, Yarum Yisrael. Kohanim was not only to serve in the Mikdash and to do the Karbanos, etc., but he was supposed to teach Torah. Well, some Kohanim actually did serve in that role. Some Kohanim didn't. What happens to the who teaches his lineage is not, he's still called a Kohen. He's a Kohen Elah of the heavens, if you will, right? This represents by the mere fact that we assume of the Kohanim. And this dual interpretation fits perfectly. In other words, there are two types of Kohanim. Now understand how the Rav is understanding this pasuk. V'atem tiyu mamleches Kohanim. You're going to be a nation, right, of Kohanim. Two different Kohanim. You're going to have the Kohen as the cleric and the Kohen who teaches. The Goy Kadosh. Oh, that is also plural. The Goy Kadosh, right? They smack on two-tier. And that's how the Rav understands this pasuk. I told you this is the most difficult pasuk of the entire presentation. But what the Rav is teaching is here. Mamleches Kohanim v'Goy Kadosh. How do you understand those words? Does it represent, as Rashi wants to say, linguistic? Kohanim means ministers and not clerics. Who's it referring to, right? Or Gumim understands Mamleches Kohanim v'Goy Kadosh, three-tiered. Mamleches is the leaders. Kohanim are the clerics. Kadosh are us. That's how the Targumim understand. Kohanim is the Kohanim have two functions. One is to be a cleric. One is to be a teacher. And Goy Kadosh, which is, are you talking about the Kohanim of like Shabtotai, right? Are you talking about the Kohanim, the Shabbos above or the Shabbos below? Are you talking about the Kohen here or the Kohen who teaches Torah? So Mamleches Kohanim is to teach us that the role of the Kohen was two-functioned according to the Rav. Which one does he choose? Well, some chose just to be clerics, right? They weren't capable, not every. If you're talented, and not every teacher is a cleric. Not every teacher can be a Kohen in the Mikdash. So Mamleches Kohanim, the Goy Kadosh, and us. Why Goy Kadosh plural? Before, you can be either the lineage Jew, or you can be also the Segula Jew. Correct? Right? You can be either the lineage, the Segula Jew. Is it Shelo Asani Goy, or is it Asher B'Charbona Mikol Amim? They both brachos, but what?
I mean, could you say Mamlechet Cohen? It makes sense.
Mamleches Kohen, yeah, a nation of Kohen.
Of a priest and just grammatically,
I don't know.
It's all conditional, right? All this is conditional.
Yeah, it's conditional on us. This is the now let's see what we've learned here. This is all the introduction to Matan Torah. How are we going to experience Matan Torah? That's what these psukim are telling us. We're getting ready for Matan Torah. Now go back and start all. See what the Rav told us. B'chodesh hashlishi, three transformative moments, right? Three transformative aspects to our experience. Chodesh, it is all Chodesh. That's the Aser Sadip. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu etch it in stone? Why didn't he give it to us in a scroll? Teaching us, if you're going, it's not an erased, it's a breaking, right? And then why did he repeat Refidim? Why did he tell us Refidim? Refidim, it was a contrast. We know what happened at Refidim. Amalek, Refidim, it taught us that different at Matan Torah, the Refidim we complained, and Matan Torah, which we had good rights to complain, we kept quiet because we learned, oh, there is always somebody lurching there who wants to kill us just because we're Jews, right? History has demonstrated we've outlived everyone. We've outlived everyone. And we're going to continue to do that, right? And then the Rav noted, Moshe was told by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to speak to two segments of the people. Kot Samar Leveis Yaakov, V'Sagei Livnei Yisrael. Why Beis Yaakov, women and men? Why couldn't she just as Kot Samar Livnei Yisrael? No. The mother and the father serve two different purposes, the spiritual teachers of the human being, right? And they were taught differently. Their purpose is totally. He asked, "What is Segula?" The Rav said that is the relationship of Nafsho, Kishura benafsho. Are a Segula people because it's an ontological merger of the Baruch Hu. And then we learned Kili Kol Haaretz. Hashem says, Kili Kol Haaretz, I can do right. I can have a bris. Rashi understood it. There was a bris Avos and a bris Sinai, right? When we lived in it, the Avos and the Shvatim, they kept the Torah. The Torah until bris Sinai. Pre Sinai is the one. Well, it took place in the Chutz La'aretz. Did not take Sinai is not part of Eretz. It's no man's land. Yeah, exactly, exactly. If your Jew lives in Eretz Israel, he has two covenants. He still has the Chutz La'aretz Jew only has. Others disagree with Rashi, but that's Rashi's perspective. And then what is Vatem Tiyulim Mamachas Kohanim B'Goy Kadosh? How do we understand that explanation? Is it a 3-tiered? Is it a 2-tiered? What is it? What is the Mamachas Kadosh? Right? Okay. Is the introduction to Matan Torah by how the Rav understands it. Okay, we should all just have a great day, and we should have mute all current. No, okay, yeah. Now, yes, I think unmuted. Okay, everybody should have a wonderful day. My day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
But now we're ready. Now we're ready for Shabbos, right? Now we're ready for Shabbos. Okay. Have a lovely day.
Thank you. Because they have two brises, because people in Eretz Israel have two responsibility for them. Is it more to do because they have two brises?
Yeah.
They have more mitzvahs.
They have more mitzvahs, but that's part of the